There comes a moment in every person's life when they must decide what is more important, the approval of others or the preservation of their own dignity. Most people spend years chasing attention from those who have already decided not to give it. They send another message, make another excuse, offer another chance, or wait for another sign that never comes. They believe persistence will eventually change someone's heart. But human nature rarely rewards desperation, it rewards confidence. The harder you chase someone who has chosen to ignore you, the more you communicate that your happiness depends upon their response rather than your own sense of worth. The hardest truth for most people to accept is that not everyone who enters your life is meant to stay, and not everyone who walks away should be followed. Human nature resists rejection because the ego constantly searches for validation. When someone begins to ignore your messages, withdraws their attention, or shows little interest in maintaining the relationship, your first instinct may be to chase them. You tell yourself that one more conversation, one more explanation, or one more act of kindness might change their mind. Yet this pursuit often has the opposite effect. The more you chase someone who has already chosen distance, the more you communicate that your happiness depends on their response rather than your own self-worth. Every unanswered message, every repeated attempt to reconnect, and every excuse you create for their behavior slowly weakens your position. It shifts the balance of the relationship by placing your emotional state in their hands. People naturally value what stands confidently on its own more than what constantly seeks approval. This is not because confidence is louder, but because it reflects inner security. Someone who respects themselves understands that relationships cannot be forced into existence. Genuine connection requires mutual effort, not one person carrying the entire weight while the other remains indifferent. Accepting another person's choice is not an admission of defeat, it is an act of emotional maturity. It allows you to preserve your dignity instead of sacrificing it for the possibility of temporary attention. When someone repeatedly shows you through their actions that they no longer wish to invest in the relationship, believing their behavior is wiser than questioning their intentions. Actions reveal priorities far more clearly than promises or excuses ever can. By refusing to chase those who have chosen distance, you create space for relationships built on genuine appreciation rather than reluctant obligation. You also protect your time and emotional energy from being consumed by uncertainty. Instead of waiting for someone else to recognize your value, you begin investing in your own growth, your own ambitions, and the people who willingly choose to stand beside you. This shift transforms your mindset from seeking acceptance to living with quiet confidence, understanding that your worth is not determined by who leaves, but by your ability to remain true to yourself after they do. Your attention is one of the most valuable resources you possess, yet it is also the one people give away most carelessly. Every thought you entertain, every conversation you continue, and every person you focus on quietly shapes the direction of your life. When someone consistently treats you with indifference, ignores your efforts, or shows little interest in your presence, continuing to invest your attention in them comes at a hidden cost. That energy could have been directed toward your personal growth, meaningful relationships, or goals that genuinely improve your future. Instead, it becomes trapped in a cycle of overthinking, waiting, and seeking answers that may never come. Human psychology naturally follows whatever receives repeated attention. The more you think about someone who ignores you, the more emotional influence you give them over your peace of mind. Without realizing it, you allow another person's choices to determine your mood, your confidence, and even your sense of self-worth. This is precisely why attention must be treated as a form of currency. Just as a wise investor carefully decides where to place their money, a wise individual carefully chooses where to place their focus. Not every person deserves unlimited access to your thoughts, your emotions, or your time. Those who repeatedly fail to appreciate your presence should not continue occupying space in your mind. This does not require anger or resentment. It simply requires discipline. Instead of asking why someone failed to value you, Ask whether they have earned the privilege of your continued attention. The answer often becomes clear through their actions rather than their words. Every moment spent chasing indifference is a moment stolen from opportunities that could genuinely enrich your life. The most influential and emotionally resilient people understand this principle well. They refuse to let rejection become the center of their attention because they know that where attention goes, energy follows, and where energy follows, results eventually appear. By withdrawing your focus from people who repeatedly overlook your value, you reclaim control over your own emotional world. Your attention returns to your ambitions, your health, your learning, and the relationships built on mutual respect. In doing so, you stop treating your focus as something to be spent freely and begin treating it as one of the greatest assets you will ever possess, investing it only where it has the potential to create growth, peace, and genuine fulfillment. Silence has a remarkable way of revealing truths that endless conversation often conceals. Many people believe that constantly reaching out, explaining themselves, or seeking reassurance will strengthen a relationship, but true intentions are rarely discovered through relentless effort. They become visible when you stop chasing, stop reminding, and stop filling every moment with your own presence. The absence of your voice creates space for another person's actions to speak clearly. If someone genuinely values you, your silence will not go unnoticed. They will wonder how you are, reach out without being prompted, and make an effort to maintain the connection because their interest comes from appreciation rather than convenience. On the other hand, if your silence changes nothing, it reveals that your presence was never as important to them as you believed. This realization may be painful, but it is far more valuable than living in uncertainty. Human nature often hides behind comfort. As long as you continue making all the effort, the other person has little reason to reveal the true depth of their commitment. They simply accept your attention as something that will always be there. The moment you step back, however, the balance changes. They must decide whether the relationship matters enough to pursue or whether they are content to let the distance remain. Their decision provides an answer that words alone could never offer. Silence also protects your dignity because it prevents you from repeatedly seeking validation from someone who may have already made their choice. Instead of exhausting yourself with unanswered messages or endless explanations, you allow time and behavior to reveal what is real. This approach requires patience because the ego naturally wants immediate certainty, but wisdom understands that genuine interest never needs to be forced. People who truly care rarely require constant reminders of your existence. They notice your absence because they value your presence. Those who only appreciated your effort will often remain silent, revealing that they were attached more to your availability than to you as a person. In this way, silence becomes a powerful form of observation rather than punishment. It allows you to distinguish between relationships built on mutual respect and those sustained only by your constant investment, giving you the clarity to place your time and emotional energy where they are genuinely welcomed rather than merely expected. Self-respect begins the moment you stop believing that your worth depends on someone else's attention. Many people unknowingly trade their dignity for the hope of being accepted. They tolerate disrespect, ignore clear signs of indifference, and continue making excuses for people who repeatedly show them where they stand. This behavior is often driven by desperation rather than love. Desperation convinces you that losing a person means losing your value, so you begin sacrificing your standards just to keep someone in your life. You become willing to accept less than you deserve because the fear of being alone feels greater than the pain of being overlooked. Yet human nature rarely rewards desperation. The more you chase approval, the more difficult it becomes for others to see your true worth. Confidence attracts respect because it reflects inner security, while desperation quietly signals uncertainty and emotional dependence. People instinctively observe how you treat yourself before deciding how they will treat you. If you repeatedly accept behavior that diminishes your dignity, you teach others that your boundaries can be ignored without consequence. Self-respect changes this pattern completely. It means recognizing that kindness should never require self-abandonment, and that love should never demand the surrender of your identity. When you begin valuing your own time, emotions, and peace, your decisions become guided by principle instead of fear. You no longer beg for attention that is freely given to others, nor do you compete for a place in someone's life. Instead, you quietly step away from situations where your presence is tolerated rather than appreciated. This is not arrogance or pride. It is the understanding that healthy relationships are built on mutual effort, not one-sided pursuit. Emotional maturity allows you to accept that not everyone will choose you, and that reality does not diminish your value as a person. By releasing the need to convince others of your importance, you reclaim control over your emotional well-being. Your confidence no longer rises and falls according to someone else's actions, because it is rooted in your own character. As desperation fades, clarity replaces confusion, and you begin investing your energy in people who willingly reciprocate your respect and care. That quiet shift transforms the way you see yourself, making your self-worth independent of external validation and allowing your dignity to remain intact regardless of who decides to stay or walk away. Distance has a quiet power that most people fail to understand because they are conditioned to believe that constant effort always produces better results. In reality, human nature often assigns greater value to what is no longer immediately available. When you are always present, always responding first, always making the plans, and always carrying the emotional weight of a relationship, your presence gradually becomes expected rather than appreciated. Familiarity can slowly reduce awareness, causing people to overlook the value you consistently bring into their lives. The moment you create healthy distance, however, that pattern begins to change. Your absence interrupts routine and gives others the opportunity to recognize what they have been taking for granted. This is not about creating artificial scarcity or manipulating emotions. It is about stepping back with dignity and allowing actions, rather than constant pursuit, to reveal the truth of a relationship. Distance also changes you. It gives you room to think clearly instead of reacting emotionally. When you are no longer consumed by waiting for someone's message or seeking their approval, your attention naturally shifts toward your own goals, your personal growth, and the people who genuinely value your presence. This internal change is often more significant than any reaction you receive from others. Confidence begins to replace anxiety because your emotional stability no longer depends on another person's behavior. Ironically, this transformation often changes how people perceive you. Those who once assumed your attention would always be available begin to realize that your time and energy are not unlimited. They recognize that access to your presence is something that must be appreciated rather than expected. Human psychology tends to respect people who demonstrate independence because independence signals self-worth and emotional strength. Whether someone chooses to return or continues to remain distant becomes less important than the fact that you have stopped compromising your dignity to maintain their interest. Distance allows your value to be seen without endless explanation because it removes the constant availability that once concealed it. It reminds both you and others that your presence is meaningful precisely because it is a choice, not an obligation. By stepping back from one-sided relationships and protecting your emotional energy, you create an environment where respect can grow naturally, and where those who truly appreciate you have the opportunity to demonstrate it through consistent actions rather than empty words. Your energy is one of the few resources in life that can never be fully recovered once it has been wasted. Every conversation, every relationship, and every emotional investment requires a portion of your attention, time, and mental strength. The question is not whether you have energy to give, but whether the people receiving it have earned the privilege of your investment. Many individuals spend years pouring themselves into relationships where their kindness is merely tolerated rather than genuinely appreciated. They become the person who always reaches out first, always forgives, always supports, and always sacrifices, while receiving little more than inconsistency in return. Over time, this imbalance quietly drains confidence and replaces fulfillment with exhaustion. Human nature often responds differently to appreciation than it does to expectation. When someone truly values your presence, they acknowledge your efforts, respect your boundaries, and contribute to the relationship with the same sincerity you offer them. Mutual respect creates emotional security because both people recognize the importance of each other's time and attention. In contrast, relationships built on tolerance often leave one person carrying the entire emotional burden while the other simply accepts the benefits without meaningful contribution. Learning to recognize this difference is an essential part of emotional maturity. It requires the courage to stop investing where there is no genuine return, even when doing so feels uncomfortable. Choosing to direct your energy toward people who celebrate your presence rather than merely accept it is not selfish. It is an act of wisdom. It reflects an understanding that your emotional well-being deserves protection just as much as your physical health. This shift also transforms the way you approach life beyond relationships. Instead of seeking validation from those who overlook your value, you begin investing in your own growth, developing your skills, strengthening your character, and surrounding yourself with individuals who inspire mutual respect and encouragement. As your focus changes, your confidence grows because your efforts begin producing meaningful results instead of constant disappointment. You no longer feel compelled to convince others of your worth because you recognize that genuine appreciation cannot be forced. It must arise naturally from people who recognize your value without endless persuasion. By placing your energy where it is welcomed, respected, and returned, you create healthier relationships, protect your peace of mind, and build a life where your kindness is treated as a gift instead of an expectation.